Roman discipline was legendary, but for the soldiers who broke the rules, the price was often worse than death. From savage beatings to punishments so cruel they shocked even their comrades, disobedience in the Roman army came with terrifying consequences. This is the dark world of Roman military punishments, and the brutal reality faced by those who dared to defy Rome. The Roman army was not only recognized for its unmatched power on the battlefield, but also for the strict discipline that held it together like steel. Every soldier knew from the very first day of training that his life no longer belonged to him, it belonged to Rome. The rules were simple. Absolute obedience, no questions asked. A single hesitation in the middle of a fight could bring disaster to an entire legion, and the commanders were never willing to take that risk. Obedience was drilled into the men through endless drills, exhausting marches, and brutal punishments. Commanders had total control over their soldiers, and their word was law. Even the smallest mistake, such as losing formation, dropping a weapon, or failing to follow orders quickly enough, could bring severe consequences. Rewards were offered for bravery and loyalty, but failure brought humiliation, suffering, or even execution. This system of iron discipline forged soldiers who were both respected and feared across the ancient world. Yet behind their armor and shields, many soldiers lived in constant fear. Fear of enemies, but more so, fear of their own commanders. For in Rome, the army was not just about glory, it was about survival under the harshest laws of war. Among the many brutal punishments in the Roman army, flogging was the most common and perhaps the most dreaded. Soldiers lived with the constant fear of being tied to a post in front of their comrades, exposed not only to pain, but to shame. Crimes such as theft, falling asleep while on guard duty, or even stepping out of formation during battle were enough to earn this terrible fate. Discipline, after all, was Rome's weapon, and flogging was the sharp edge that kept soldiers in line. But this was no ordinary beating. The instrument of punishment was the flagrum, a whip far more terrifying than it appeared. Unlike a simple lash of leather, its straps were embedded with sharp pieces of bone or heavy bits of metal. Each strike was designed not just to sting, but to tear through flesh, ripping open wounds that bled heavily. The victims' cries echoed across the camp, serving as a warning to every man watching. Some soldiers never rose again, dying from blood loss or deadly infections that set in after the beating. Those who survived bore scars that marked them for life, etched reminders of Rome's unforgiving discipline. To their fellow legionaries, these scars spoke louder than words. In the Roman army, disobedience always had a price. Beyond brutal beatings, humiliation stood as another ruthless weapon in the arsenal of Roman discipline. Commanders understood that fear alone was not enough. Sometimes shame was a stronger chain than any whip. One of the most degrading punishments was branding. A soldier who displayed cowardice or failed his duty could be forced to kneel before the entire legion, while a hot iron was pressed against his forehead. The mark it left behind was more than just a scar. It was a permanent label of disgrace. Imagine the weight of such a punishment. Every time that soldier walked through the camp, every glance from his fellow legionaries reminded him of his weakness. When he entered a town or marketplace, strangers could see at once that he had failed Rome. There was no escape. No chance to hide the shame burned into his skin. His very face became a warning to others. The Romans believed that dishonor could break a man faster than pain. By turning punishment into a spectacle, they ensured that loyalty was not just expected, it was demanded. Discipline in their eyes was not simply about correcting mistakes. It was about crushing the spirit of disobedience before it had the chance to spread. Perhaps the most infamous punishment in the entire history of the Roman military was decimation. Unlike a simple beating or branding, this punishment was designed to strike terror into an entire unit. Whenever a legion was guilty of cowardice, desertion, or mutiny, commanders unleashed this dreadful sentence. The rules were merciless. Every 10th man would die, no matter how loyal or brave he had been. The soldiers were gathered together, trembling in silence as lots were drawn. Each man prayed that fate would spare him, but luck was as cruel as the punishment itself. Those chosen did not face an executioner's blade. They faced their own comrades. Their brothers in arms were ordered to carry out the killings using clubs, stones, or even their bare hands to beat their fellow soldiers to death. The horror of decimation was not only in the deaths, but in the scars it left on the survivors. Imagine the torment of killing the man who had marched beside you, fought beside you, even shared bread with you. Rome used this brutality to make sure no soldier ever forgot. His survival depended not only on his own courage, but on the discipline of the entire unit. The shadow of decimation haunted every legion, a grim reminder that failure meant turning on your own. In the Roman world, There was no greater betrayal than running from the battlefield. Cowardice was not seen as weakness. It was treason against Rome itself. A deserter was more despised than the enemy, for he had abandoned his brothers and dishonored his empire. The punishment was swift and merciless. Some were crucified, nailed to wooden crosses, and left to die slowly under the burning sun. Others were hurled into arenas to be torn apart by wild beasts, or forced into gladiatorial combat where death was all but guaranteed. These were not just executions, they were messages carved in blood. Every soldier watching understood that there was no safety in retreat, no mercy in surrender. Better to fall in battle with honor than to live as a coward condemned. Shame of desertion was so feared that men often fought to the last breath rather than risk capture and punishment. To Rome, death was not the ultimate punishment. Disgrace was. And so, in the legions, the shadow of treason loomed large, reminding every soldier that loyalty was life and cowardice was a fate worse than death. Not every punishment came with immediate death. For some, Rome preferred a slower, more terrifying lesson. Soldiers condemned for disobedience or betrayal were sometimes left to linger in agony, their suffering drawn out over days. They could be tied to stakes without food or water, forced to endure hunger, thirst, and the unrelenting sun. Others were humiliated in front of their comrades, mocked and beaten while waiting for the inevitable end. One of the cruelest punishments was burial alive. Soldiers were placed in shallow pits, their cries muffled by dirt as the earth itself became their coffin. The slow suffocation, witnessed by their comrades, was a horror none could forget. Rome understood that fear was not just in the whip or the blade, it was in the mind. The psychological torture of knowing death was coming, but not when, could break a man more completely than pain ever could. For the legion, these spectacles served as grim lessons. Punishment was not just about one man's crime, it was about controlling the hearts of thousands. By stretching suffering into days, commanders reminded every soldier, Rome's justice was patient, merciless, and inescapable. Rome's punishments were rarely carried out in secret. Instead, they were turned into theater, terrifying performances staged before the entire legion. Soldiers were forced to watch as their comrades were whipped until their backs split open, burned alive, or torn apart limb by limb. The screams filled the camp, embedding themselves into the minds of those who remained. Sometimes soldiers were paraded through towns in chains, mocked by civilians who spat on them before they were executed. The humiliation did not end with death. It lingered, branding their memory with shame. Rome believed punishment was most effective when it was shared. When thousands of eyes witnessed the fall of one, these spectacles reinforced a cruel truth. Rome controlled not just a soldier's body, but his honor and dignity. No man could escape its grip. Even in punishment, Rome displayed its dominance, reminding its enemies and its own troops alike that the empire's power extended beyond the battlefield. The soldiers who survived these shows carried the memory forever, living proof that disobedience was not merely a personal failing, but a public disgrace, designed to terrify all who served under the eagle standards of Rome. Punishment in Rome did not always fall on individuals. At times, entire units bore the weight of failure. If a cohort lost formation or retreated in panic, commanders stripped them of their weapons and armor, very symbols of their honor. These disgraced men were expelled from the safety of the camp walls and forced to live exposed, without food, pay, or protection. Left vulnerable to wild animals, enemy raids, and starvation, the men faced a cruel reality. Rome had abandoned them. Their suffering was a reminder that the legion's strength was unity, and one man's weakness could doom them all. Such punishments shattered morale, but they also bound survivors more tightly to discipline. After enduring disgrace, no soldier wished to suffer it again. By punishing groups rather than individuals, Rome reminded its armies that failure was contagious. If one faltered, all could pay the price. This collective responsibility forged a terrifying bond. Each soldier knew his life depended not only on his courage, but on the courage of every man beside him. In Rome's eyes, unity was not just a strategy. It was law, enforced by fear and sealed in blood. The weight of Roman discipline was so heavy that some soldiers chose to escape it, the only way they could, by taking their own lives. The threat of decimation, branding, or public humiliation pushed men to desperation. For them, suicide was not cowardice, but a final act of control in a world where Rome owned everything: their labor, their honor, even their death. Some slit their throats in silence before punishment could begin. Others hurled themselves upon their own swords in the darkness of night. Rome did not encourage this, but it did not mourn it either. Each suicide became another warning, another chilling reminder that fear ruled stronger than loyalty. The legion thrived on this silent terror, Soldiers learned that death at their own hand could be preferable to Rome's justice. And yet this fear ensured that the majority obeyed without hesitation, too frightened to risk disgrace or punishment. In this way, even the suicide served Rome's power, for they showed that escape was impossible. The empire commanded not just men's actions, but their very will to live. The story of Roman punishments is not one of mere cruelty. It is a story of control, of power wielded through fear. Rome forged an army unlike any before it, by breaking men down with whips, brands, torture, and execution. Every scar, every public death, every burial alive was another link in the chain that bound soldiers to obedience. This discipline made the Roman legions the most feared military force of their time. Soldiers fought harder, marched further, and obeyed more completely because they knew the price of failure. Yet the cost was terrible. For those who served, life was not just a struggle against enemies. It was a constant battle against their own commanders, a fight to survive the merciless discipline of Rome itself. The legacy left behind is dark and unforgettable. History remembers Rome's glory, its conquests, and its empire. But behind that brilliance lies a shadow of unimaginable cruelty. Legions were not only built on honor and courage, they were built on fear, humiliation, and blood. And so, the Roman army remains a chilling reminder. The greatest empires are not always sustained by loyalty or love of country, but by the unrelenting grip of fear.